Thanks again, everyone, for being here this afternoon at our Mount Larcom Community Forum, and for those who will be watching online. As I said before, our first community forum since COVID was here in Mount Larcom, and we've been taking them around the region again. We had about 12 community members attend the last one here in Mount Larcom, and we answered 9 questions from the community, which were mostly around roads and the pool and more. And I guess on the pool, I'm going to ask our General Manager of Community and Lifestyle, Kylie Lee, to give an update. In addition to what I've already said, but the good news, I'm going to say that for those watching online, is that the pool will be opening 5 days a week and that we have a local operator, and Kylie has some more details on times.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So as you know, we open our Mount Larcom pool for the spring-summer season. So that opens, thank you very much to Simon May, who's sitting over there, on the 1st of September. We've been working really, really hard to get a local to actually operate the pool. What we were finding is that lifeguards from Gladstone are in short supply. So it was really difficult to get them to come out and have regular opening hours out here. So Simon and the team at South Swimming Club have actually recruited a Mount Larcom local, which we're really excited about, and they will be opening the pool 5 days a week. So we'll have some consistency in our opening hours, which I'm really looking forward to, and I know that you'll be probably looking forward to having some schedules in place to actually go to swimming. So I'm sending the opening hours to everybody who has given their email address to Talia. So that email will be going to you in a second, but just to remind you, on Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays and Sundays, the pool will be open between 11 and 5, okay? And then on Fridays, it'll be open from 9 till 5. So the Fridays is mainly for the school. So our school uses our Mount Larcom pool for their intense swimming season across November and December. Simon did a big project a couple of years ago to extend the life of the pool while we're making an investment decision. So we will have a report to council either at the end of this year or beginning of next year around the investment decision for Mount Larcom pool. At the moment, our priority project for aquatic centres is the Boyne-Tanham Aquatic Centre. So I apologise that we haven't had a focus on the Mount Larcom one. We just need to get over the project for the Boyne-Tanham one, and then we'll come back to Mount Larcom. So definitely haven't forgotten about you at all, and we will absolutely keep you involved and updated on the pool's progress. So has anyone got any questions on the pool? Oh, sorry. You'd think I'd know this by now because I've done so many of these, Liz. If you can just ask the question on there.
Oh, thank you, Kylie. Are you going to name the local people who are going to be running the pool?
Are we allowed to name the person?
Yeah, so let me just... So the operators are still South Swimming Club. So South Swimming Club have the lease for Gladstone and Larcom. The local staff is a lady called Michelle. I don't know her last name. I've met with her yesterday, ran through operating stuff. I'll be meeting with her Monday morning before we open just to make sure she's all over it, and she'll be a direct contact with the management of South, but also with me as far as any of the gear, any of the problems that she might come across. She's fairly new to swimming, but I was with her when she did the lifeguard course a couple of weeks ago, and she completed it, so she can save your life. But she's local. I don't know her surname is Michelle. She's got a couple of kids at the school here. So does that ring a bell? Nope. I don't know. No, sorry. So the actual operators are the same. It's just a local staff member will be here working with them. So does that help? Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. So I think it'd be a great idea to know Michelle. So maybe when you go and visit the pool on the 1st of September between 11 and 5, go and say hi to Michelle.
Thank you, Kylie. We'll move into one of the first of the 4 questions, and like I said, we'll open up to the floor after this. Just so people like to submit their questions beforehand, and I love this. Gives everyone an opportunity. So the first question: some time ago, council announced they were going to do low-cost seals on our rural roads. When and where is this going to happen? And I'll hand over to Noel Barlow to help answer that question.
That's been put out to consultants. I believe the report's due to come in early September. there's a lot of considerations to be taken, like drainage works and all that. Once we have that, then I'll go to the assets team and they'll work out the locations we're going to do, and then that'll be rolled out. So are we all aware of what a low-cost seal is? No. Low-cost seal basically is subgrade constructed of existing materials that's at the location, then 150 of processed gravel, and then a 2-coat bitumen seal, which is a 710, 10 mil stone and 7. It's for low volume. There is a life of the product, but that depends on traffic volumes and all that. So, any questions?
Was that what we got in Taylor's Lane? Well, that's pretty brilliant. After 100 years, it's a lot better than what was there.
No, that's up again. That's a higher grade again because of the traffic volume. That's the one you want for the extended end of the road, yep. I'll pass that on, yeah, because it's calculated on, I don't like Mike's. The air show. But it... Yep, well, we'll look into that. We'll get the counters, and as I said, the grade of the restoration works we do goes on traffic volume. So,
low-cost seals, we've used them in a number of places, and I wouldn't think Gentilini Road would be one that would use it. It's the higher traffic volume, but there are certainly other roads that work really well on. So, yeah, it's certainly not. I think the traffic numbers on Gentilini would be too much for a road low-cost seal. Yeah.
One question regarding school bus routes. Wasn't that true that the federal government gave every council and every state government to tar seal school bus routes? Why is there roads in this council which have not been tar sealed, which have got school buses travelling down them?
If you can find the federal government grant that gave councils the funding to do that, I'll gladly take it and spend it on those roads. That is.
In the financial budget.
They gave councils, every council in the country, enough money to.
And every state government was coming down to the state government to make all school bus routes on a tar sealed road.
Well, there'd be two things. Firstly, I'd love to see that because I only got elected in the year 2000, so it's before my time. But I would be very surprised if every council in the country, there's 537 of them now, there would have been more back then, actually received that funding. And also school bus routes change. So it's very difficult for that to happen. And the bus routes will continue to change. Unfortunately, where people live, bus routes change. Not very regularly, but they do change. So if the federal government would give us more money, we'll gladly seal the roads. They collect...
With the council amalgamation, which was written in that saying no council is responsible for a previous council's actions for funding, does that mean the council actually absorbed the money and redistributed the wealth?
No, I don't believe we received the money, to be quite honest. And as I said, no, I don't believe it. Yeah.
Council, Gingin Council, they will all receive the money individually because of the amalgamation in 2010. That's where all the funding got shifted.
No, well, the amalgamations were in 2008. And as I said, there was... I got elected in the year 2000, and I'm not aware of any money coming from the federal government to cover and seal every single bus route in every part of the nation.
School buses only, so school bus routes.
Yeah, for a school bus route, there are hundreds of thousands of kilometres of school bus routes, no doubt, that have no bitumen seals on them. And if the federal government has made that decision and given the funding to the allocation to the councils, they would have had to acquit that funding. So we do have funding through TIDS, which is Infrastructure Development Scheme, which is given to councils through the state government for allocated roads, and we use that. We have federal government funding for roads recovery, and we use that on those projects as well, and they're all acquitted. There is programs for schools where you get funding for flashing lights, you get upgrading, it's called Safe FT. I was on the Traffic Environment Advisory Committee when we received funding for school upgrades, but I've never seen or heard of the federal government saying, here's enough funding for every council in the country to seal every single bus route, go forth and do it, because if you can show me where that was, I'll go back to the federal government and say, give us the money. Show me the money and we'll seal the bus routes. Please do. I would love to hear more about it. Show me the money, Mr. Prime Minister. We'll seal the bus routes if we can get more funds from the federal government. The federal government collects over 80% of our taxes and they give back local councils 0.5%. We've been fighting for 1% of your local taxes to come back to councils across the country for a number of years. And I know this well because I'm National President of Local Government and I sit there on National Cabinet and on ministerial councils. Only about 2 weeks ago, I was with the Infrastructure Transport Minister and every Minister of Transport around the country fighting for more funds for local councils so we can upgrade your local roads. And I have some people who have said to me over the years, in councils, is roads still an important issue for you? I said, it's the biggest issue for us. We need funding, especially in rural parts and regional parts of Australia, funding for local roads. So, we get all your taxes that you pay, 80% of them go to Canberra. We get less than 5 or just on 5%, 0.5% of that back. So if we could get 1%, imagine what we could do with it. And I'd love to seal those roads. Let's go to the next question. This one's for you, Tim, because Kim's away. How many of the 19 fire brigades in the Gladstone region are receiving funding from council rates? Tim, this one's for you. How many of the 19 fire brigades in the Gladstone region are receiving funding from council rates?
Hi, everyone. I just want to start off by saying that I wasn't originally meant to answer this question, but unfortunately our General Manager of Finance, Governance and Risk that covers this area wasn't able to make it today, but she's passed on the information for me to pass on to you. But if there are any further questions, we can get back to you on that. So the response that I have was the funding for fire groups in the Gladstone region are determined in consultation with Rural Fire Brigade's head office and relevant group leaders. All functional fire brigades are allocated a portion of the overall funds, which is determined with each group in advance of a meeting with council representatives. The only time funding is withheld is if there is a fire group not currently operational and or there are delays in audit paperwork, annual general meeting documentation, etc. These funds are held in trust. In addition to funding each group individually, council also works with the Queensland Fire Department on allocating funds for future fleet replacement. This is held in trust until such time as it's required by the Rural Fire Brigades. Council's Rural Fire Brigades funding arrangements policy is available on Council's website. Did anyone have any additional questions for that one?
Who is the management for the Rural Fire Brigades? Who is the management for them? Who manages them for us?
Yeah, the local fire brigade obviously have their own people who manage it. In terms of who works with them from council, we have Emma Catlin in our disaster management crew or team, and we also have Mark Holmes as our local disaster coordinator, but they don't manage the rural fire brigades. They manage themselves through Firecom. Yeah, well, yes, and you could write... Well, based in Rockhampton, they also have an office in Gladstone in the Kalamunda Industrial Estate. That's where the main fire station head office is, I guess you could say, emergency services. But you can write to us and we'll make sure it gets to the right people. So it's easy to find us. You can write to info@gladstone.qld.gov.au, write to me directly, Mayor at Gladstone, and I'll get through to Emma and she'll make sure it gets to the right person and I'll get back to you. It'll take a little longer that way, but we don't manage rural fire brigades. We support them 100%. They do amazing work, and I know Mr. Brady's here in the room, certainly been involved in the rural fire brigade for many years. And probably others in the room as well, and certainly some people online. But yeah, they do amazing work. Question 3, yes. Oh, well, we might have that contact for you before you head off. Lovely, thanks, Carly Quinn. That's the direct question to you. Next is a little tricky with the wording. Let's see if I got this right. Please confirm the community benefits from land sales, safety concerns, and community benefit for solar, wind, and battery projects. I think we're talking about CBAs.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So council have been advocating very strongly for a number of years to ensure that we get the community benefits from investment in our region. And it's pleasing to see that the state government have now implemented some legislation that enforces that. There's two key parts to that legislation. And the first is the SIA. So the Strategic Infrastructure Impact, social impact assessment. The SIA is a social impact assessment. So firstly, if they want to invest in our region for solar farms and wind farms, they will need to do a social impact assessment. Part of the legislation for that is community consultation. So community must be consulted. So we very much strongly recommend that the community actively get engaged in that consultation phase. It has to be advertised, it has to be promoted. We will also make sure that community aware, but council don't do that consultation. It needs to be by the proponent themselves. Once they have that impact assessment, that then tells the state, when they're putting their application in, what their impact of their investment will be, or their solar farm or their wind farm, what the impact will be on the community. And it'll show all sorts of things. So it'll have impact on roads, it'll have impact on social infrastructure such as health and housing, any of the impacts that will be there will be in that assessment. That is what then council are now obligated to engage with the proponent on and develop what's called a community benefit agreement. So a CBA, as the Mayor mentioned. The community benefit agreement must be negotiated with council. Council has to agree to the benefits that they are going to invest in the community. The benefit agreement has to satisfy the needs that have been identified from that impact assessment. And not until council have negotiated and agreed with that CBA can they then submit their application to the state for approval. So they have to have both the SIA and the CBA, which is endorsed by council, to put their application in. So we're very, very excited by this opportunity, and it is a great opportunity for us. It does obviously mean additional work for council, and we're working through how that happens, but it's really important work that we think we need to do. So what you'll see in probably the next 8 to 12 weeks, you'll see council endorse the community benefit agreement policy. We're working through what that looks like now. We're engaging with lots of other councils across the state to ensure that we're getting the best policy. We're taking all of the great ideas from everywhere, as well as our council, to make sure that the policy we put in place makes sure that those benefits come back to our local region. But the key message is when those social impact assessments are being done by proponents, when they're consulting with the community, please make sure your voice is heard. We need those SIAs to show what the impact will be on our region so that we can negotiate on your behalf to make sure that those impacts are addressed.
Another question?
Yes.
Impact assessment done by the company. They had one for the battery land. They sold land to a battery company that's putting in storage of batteries at the Raglan Tavern before they bought the land. One couple turned up. And I only know that because I know the couple. So, and there was no advertisement, there was no letter in the mailbox, there was nothing. I don't do social media, and none of us knew about it. Not one of us. So how can council guarantee that the information is getting back to the state government about what these companies are doing to the local people? The local people need you, the council, to make sure your policies do this assessment, not the company, because the company will tell you what they want you to know.
The Mayor might want to add to this as well. But part of that impact assessment is council are consulted as well. So we must be consulted in that first phase as well. And we will be very clear with what we believe the impacts will be on local communities for these projects. And we will also be telling them what we think they need to be doing to close those gaps. Then we also get that opportunity at the CBA part to negotiate. And they cannot submit the application without our council endorsing what they're going to give back to our community.
People say they don't
It all depends on the stage the application is at. Yeah, it would have absolutely it would have been, and I was going to get to that. It's very hard the way people access. Like we don't have the local newspaper anymore. Every day you have once a week with the Gladstone Today. Shout out Gladstone News, which is monthly, I think, or quarterly. Sorry, 2 weekly. No, it's called Gladstone News Weekly. It's weekly. Sorry, Gladstone News. I used to be the editor. It was a long time ago. And there's certain things that by law they have to do, but they certainly have to get information out. But like Carly said, that there's been a change in legislation. This is the change that councils have been asking for. This is a direct result of every council. There's 77 councils in Queensland put forward a motion at our annual conference, which was in Brisbane, and called on the Queensland government, which is a just recently elected government under the new Premier Christopher Foley, who's changed the legislation so that councils there's a rule around them having a community benefit agreement, and that we have to be involved in the development process. So some of the ones in the past might have been able to slip through, but certainly that won't be happening anymore because the legislation won't allow it. And I think it's a good legislation. I've never been keen to. Sorry. Well, Well, when it comes to the CBA, which is a community benefit agreement, we're working with, it's only a new thing. This legislation's only just been changed. So what we're doing is we're working with councils like Mount Isa, like Moranbah, like Western Downs and Toowoomba, and other councils that are going through exactly what we're going through, Banana Shire, Central Highlands, Rockhampton, and saying, what's the impacts to your community and what's the best outcome for all of our communities so we can have one way of forward and saying, right, no matter where you're building your renewable energy project, whether it's a BESS, which is a battery energy storage system, whether it's a wind farm, whether it's a solar farm, whether it's a hydrogen project, or what it might be, what's best practice, what's best result for councils and communities, and we're all on the same hymn sheet. Because the last thing you need is Western Downs doing one thing, Gladstone doing something else, and Central Highlands or someone else or Mount Isa doing something else again. They'll play us off against each other. And they can't go to the next stage. This is the best part about the legislation. They cannot get approval or even lodge their application with the Queensland government until they have that CBA approved by council. Part of that CBA is going to be make sure they've been consulted with our communities. Yes. Well, that's what we're asking for. We haven't got the funding yet, but that'll be lovely. And part of our agreements to the government will be saying, give us the funding. I can't tell the Queensland government what to do with their money. I try. I try often. We will. And when you have the mighty power of when all 77 councils come together, and that's what happened at conference last year. It was a unanimous decision of all councils in the state that said we need support when it comes to renewable energy projects. In Gladstone, we've dealt with 3 LNG plants, 2 alumina refineries, an aluminium smelter, and lots of industry over the years. We're not new to this, but new to solar farms, wind farms, and battery storage systems, and the way that some were assessed under an impact assessable application, others were code accessible applications. What they could do on rural properties that they couldn't do on other properties was kind of a bit outrageous. So we needed statewide legislation so the cowboys couldn't get away with what they were trying to get away with. There's some really good operators that run renewable energy projects in the state of Queensland. There's some rough players as well. So we said, this is not the Wild West. We need legislation from the state. They've introduced it. Now we've got to work with them on that. And if we can get them to help us fund the process of completing the CBA, that would be even better. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they certainly, at the end of the project, they need to take that in consideration. Sorry, what one over here, then we'll come back over this way. Do you want?
So with your studies and everything you've mentioned, what is the studies relating animal replacement when they fence off these areas like the new solar plant between the Gladstone Highway and the Narrows Road? They completely fenced it off. What happened to all the wild pigs, kangaroos, wild dogs in that area? They got shifted onto the farms, and the farmers are now having to shoot them to keep their livestock intact or to keep their crops going. Where is the council situated on that?
So that is the Gladstone State Development Area. It was approved by the Queensland Government. It's a coordinated project, or basically, because it's state development area, it's under the Department of State Development, and they do the approval. So council didn't approve or refuse that project. It was approved by the Queensland Government, and whatever conditions they put on it. And I know that the Acciona solar farm you're referring to had to work with the neighbours nearby. Now, I'm not here to be their cheerleader. If they've done something wrong in terms of sending wild pigs, which are an absolute massive pest, not just in our region, but right across the state, then they should absolutely address that. And it's not too late for them to do that either, because I know they want to be good neighbours. But again, that area between Gladstone and Mount Larcom, that area in there is designated for major industry, and it was done that way so industry could come through the planning process a lot quicker. So if they've done the wrong thing, or they need to address that, I'll make sure that they're aware of it, but we have no enforcement on them for that because it was approved by Queensland Government. So,
For example, on the Gladstone Highway, last week there's been 3 rather large skivvies dead on the road. Council hasn't picked up the carcasses and moved it, but they've basically run over and destroyed tyres. Why hasn't the council actually done something to remove the roadkill off the road?
if it's the Bruce Highway you're referring to, or the Gladstone?
Highway between Gladstone and Mount Larcom.
Okay, well that's road tech, so that will be the Queensland Government. That the road we own most of the roads in the state councils, but there's a few we don't own. And main roads like Gladstone Mount Larcom Road is a responsibility of the Queensland Government, not passing the buck, but that's their road. They don't have many. Well, that's ours, yes. And if there's an issue there,
There's actually gone down there to remove the carcasses.
okay. Well, if I haven't been on Narrows Road in the last 6 months, unfortunately, so if there's some carcasses on there that we need to be aware of, please send them through. Let the team know over there, and Noel's here. He might be able to help us.
If they are reported, it'll go through the CSR process, and I will send a team out there, and we actually collect the dead carcass off the road. But if we don't know about it,
It's a bit like the council's policy regain. If you get a punch of time on the Narrows Road because of a roadkill, unless you actually report to council before you got the puncher, council's not responsible for changing for replacing the tyre. Is that the same policy? Alright.
Okay, we've got another question over here.
Matt, just out of interest, I was just wondering if that battery project has been approved at the one on Gentlemanly Road.
I don't have town planning here with us. The only department we didn't bring. I'm not sure if that one has been approved. I'm pretty sure it hasn't, but I can find out more information for you and come back to you. There's a number of battery projects. I don't think this is out of the one that... There's one that I think is withdrawn, and I know where that is. And there's another that is in the process of going through an application. And the one you're referring to, it didn't come to the table that I'm aware of. So unless it was approved under delegated authority, which is very possible, which is why we've asked for the legislation to be changed so that everyone had to go through the same process. If you want to build a high-rise development next door to someone in Talina, you've got to go through a process, and you just don't get a rights to do that because that's not the amenity you bought in. And if you want to build a solar farm in a rural setting and you're going to take away the amenity of someone who moved into a rural setting and they don't have the rights to be able to put an objection in, or their objection isn't taken into consideration in a court of law, that's not fair either. So that's why the legislation has changed. They've heard loud and clear from communities and from councils that neighbours need to have a say as well. I've seen a really good example that comes from America, but it's been used by a company in Australia where they want to put a solar farm, for example, on a certain block of land. The people there receive, say, 60% of the benefit. The next lot of neighbours out receive 20 or 30% benefit, and then 10%. And so they make sure that everyone's included in the process, and they have had no objection to their projects when they include their neighbours. If you're going to be a good neighbour with a renewable energy project, you might find it'll get approved a lot quicker through the Queensland Government than if you're going to be a bad neighbour. And it's one thing to say, I want all these solar farms here, and I'm going to put my house over here, and then your neighbour's house is there. They bought in a rural setting because they want to look at trees and kangaroos, and they don't want to look at solar farms, and they don't want to look at wind farms, and they don't want to have a battery storage system that might catch on fire and burn their house down. So I support green energy, don't get me wrong, but I want it in the right place and making sure that the community benefits are there and the neighbours are taken into consideration all the way through. And that's what the state legislation is going to do. Well, well, it depends where it goes. Well, I'm not the one who's going to assess that. Yeah, we'll have a lot more projects come to our region because we are the biggest energy users in the state. Boyne Smelter itself uses probably about a third of Queensland's energy. And then in the top 10 energy users in Queensland would be the Boyne Smelter, Queensland Alumina, probably Rio Tinto and Cement Australia. So we probably got 4 in the top 10 biggest energy users. Now, Rio Tinto, not here to sell green energy today, but Rio Tinto has signed up to net zero by 2050. They are decarbonising their local carbon output. They want to reduce that the footprint, and they're going to do that in places like Gladstone because their global emissions, their largest global emissions, are in Gladstone. So if they want to reach their targets, they've got to make investments in Gladstone. Now they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars making changes at Rio, at QAL, at Boyne Smelter, so they can reduce their carbon footprint. Well, they've signed up to it. I'm just saying what Rio's done. And what they also need to do is purchase green energy at the same time because they know, what they've told us is that markets around the world are going to want to buy green aluminium and green alumina. And if they don't produce it, they're not going to be able to sell it. And they want to be competitive. Rio Tinto could have easily packed up and said, you know what, we can't afford to keep doing this in this town. And they could have closed down 2 alumina refineries and aluminium smelter, and we would be in a hell of pain. But what they've done is they've said, actually, we're going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're also going to see a lot of renewable energy projects supply green energy to them. They don't want them projects to be in Hughenden. Lovely Hughenden, good friends up there. Absolutely. But they also want a lot of their green energy close by, which is why they're making deals with places like Acciona in this Gladstone State Development area because it's close by. Well, I'm not looking after Rio Tinto. I'm just telling you what they're doing. Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the power station. Our power station is a unique opportunity to support green energy because it can ramp up and ramp down very quickly. So when the sun's shining and the wind is blowing, the Gladstone Power Station, NRG, can ramp down. And at night time, when the sun's not shining and maybe there's a still night, it can ramp up very quickly. So I think our power station's got a long life to live, but that's not what we're here to discuss today. Sorry.
I just know that the power station in Gladstone, and I know this bloke also is about Gladstone. So it's not just Rio.
No, Rio's got
If they don't spend the money on clean coal, we wouldn't have problems with
That's probably a bit higher level than me to determine whether the federal government spends money on that. I wish they would. Yes. The one I've got? Oh, yeah, sorry, I thought you had another question on that. And I'm sure I know where this question came from. Can the CWA still park out the front of the hall? Yeah, yes. Can that be the easiest question I answer today? Yes, you can. Yes. And if you get a ticket, Uncle Mark will sort that out because they've given me directions from our local laws team that that's not an issue. Yes. You do amazing work at the CWA, so certainly if someone issues you a ticket, I don't know anything about it. That did not happen. Okay, now that's the prepared questions. I know we've been asking other questions throughout the time, but I'm happy to take any other questions you've got. And I also thank you, Councillor Chris Cameron. Thank you for being here with us today.
We've got a couple of minutes for any other questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
just a question. It's back to the solar farm. Like when Acciona came here, they did have public consultation, but that was basically telling us what they're doing. There was no other opportunity for residents to actually make comments. And considering that there is this development area it's been zoned for development, then what say do locals have in other things being developed. Basically, we have no say.
Well, with the state development area, it's unique because council doesn't have a lot of say in what happens there either. And it's the idea of a state development area is it's already gone through all the process of being designated and declared for state development, for major industrial development. There was going to be a nickel refinery in there. That didn't happen. But we do have an alumina refinery, as in Rio Tinto. We do have cement facility. We do have the biofuels facility at Northern Oil, Southern Oil. We do have the Orica as well and Alpha HPA. So those sorts of major industries will go there. You do have an opportunity to put concerns through, and they're supposed to deal with community better than they do. But being state declared, that really gives them an advantage, I guess, to say, come to Gladstone, all the boxes are already ticked. We want you to come into this space here. We still want them to be good corporate citizens. Generally, they do that, but they don't necessarily have to do that. And we try as a council to get them to do that. What we'd like to see is for council to be a concurrence agency, which means that conditions we put on them, they would have to abide by, rather than a referral agency or a lesser agency in terms of our rights to put conditions on projects. We just don't have those rights to put conditions on projects in the state development area. That's done by the Queensland Government. What we do have is the ability to put forward our suggestions, our ideas, and say this is what you should do. And if they want to be good corporate citizens, and by and large, most of our major industries are good corporate citizens. I can sit here and list the amazing things they do, and people say, oh, you're a big cheer squad for industry. We wouldn't be the community we are without major industry, but we do have to hold them to account to make sure they're doing the right thing. And I think by and large they are. Do you want the mic?
Question which I've got is, you're talking all about the carbon footprint. What are you doing regarding the silicon footprint from the wind turbines, from the waste coming off them, which shear off the blades, and off the solar panels? I know other councils have had to implement separate charges for solar panels being dumped at their tips because of the silicon component. So what is the council doing regarding the silicon footprint of laying all this green energy being infrastructured in the area?
So, as collectively at the moment, Gladstone doesn't have solar farms that are operational that are being pulled apart and taken to our dump, but eventually that possibly will be the case. So, as I said before, we're working with other councils to come up with best practices, but ideally what we want them to do is recycle whatever components they can. But if they're going to put something in our landfill, like they do with asbestos or like they do with any material that we don't necessarily want there's an extra charge for them. So they're not going to get away with dumping something unwanted at any of our... Well, we've only got one landfill. You won't be able to take it to a transfer station like at Mount Larcom. You would have to take it to the landfill at Banaraby, and there will be a higher charge for that. Right now, I don't have that price of that charge because it's not something that comes in regularly. But you can speak to like a Boyne smelter or someone else who brings waste to our landfill. They pay a higher price for it, more than you would pay as a resident, more than a commercial operator will pay. It's like, if you're, like I said before, if it's asbestos at your house, there's certain areas at the tip that it's got to be located and a certain price you'll pay for it. So ideally we want them to recycle their components, reuse them and go hard and keep the projects going so we don't see a solar farm go up in 20 years, be completely pulled down and end up at our landfill. But at the same time, councils are actually working together. I know Banana Shire particularly is working with other local industries to work out how they can recycle things like this. I know they're recycling big tyres from their mines, and if someone else can come on and recycle components from renewable energy projects like solar farms or whatever else, that's going to be something that'll be welcomed as well.
Wind turbines, you have the blades. Now they've got a life expectancy of about 4 years. They're too fragile to be transported off site, so they're left on the ground to biodegrade on the ground. Nothing will grow from the silicon that's coming off those old wind turbine blades.
Yeah, well, that might be happening in other parts. It's certainly not happening in the Gladstone region right now because we just don't have any.
You look at with how many people in the Gladstone catchment are actually upgrading their solar grade systems. Now, the companies who are doing it are saying, putting posts up on TikTok, Facebook, whatever, saying, here, come and take it free because it's too expensive for us to actually take it to the tip.
Yeah, okay. Well, we might be able to. We might be able to take that offline. I don't know. Like I said, there's no wind farms that are currently operational, and I would like to think that if they're going to spend a fortune on putting these big blades in, that they'd have a longer life than 4 years.
Cannot last more than 4 years because of how much fatigue is actually happening to them.
Well, then that's an issue for the companies to work out how they're going to address it. It's called product stewardship. It's something else we're discussing at a national issue as well. It comes right down to the little Mentos tablet, little lollies you get, the little Mentos that are in a little packet. Everyone rips one of them open and then they throw those little packets away and they end up all over the place, end up in your oceans. We're looking at product stewardship right from the little Mentos packet right through to the big blades you're talking about. The companies who benefit from the monies they make out of producing these products need to be responsible for the waste that they're creating. As I said, right down from a paper piece of plastic that's wrapped up with a lolly right through to a massive wind blade, whether it ends up at a transfer station or whether it gets recycled or what. But
Can I get a commitment from you that you'll respond to in time regarding the silicon footprint and what the council's going to do to resolve that issue before it actually happens?
I can ask our, what's department would that be? Is that your department, Carly? Can we get back to the gentleman regarding how we would manage the silicon from wind turbines at our transfer station or landfill? Yep. We got them? Yes. Yeah, and so that's a perfect way to wrap it up because it goes right back to the community benefit agreements. The Queensland Government have changed the legislation which allows us to put CBAs in place, which means that no project will be able to proceed without a CBA, and it can include exactly things like that. So thank you for that. And thank you everyone being here this afternoon. That does wrap up our question time, but Councillor Cameron and I and our staff will be around for a little bit longer. Thank you everyone watching online. We've got a lot more community forums coming up. Kylie, do you know where they are off the top of your head? I know I've seen, I think it's Baffle and Turkey Beach. 5 coming. Keep an eye on the website and you'll see where they're at. Thanks. Cheers.